All right, Southern Kingdom here. Looking at the second lesson of Southern Kingdom with the early, about the middle, I guess, of the Southern Kingdom. Last week we looked at Joash, who had become king. Remember Athaliah, his mother, they executed her. He's now brought up as the boy king. And really, he's listed as a good king because of the good things that he did. I don't know if he really qualifies, though, for a good king. Right? He qualifies on the outside because, and when I say good, he doesn't qualify as good. If good just means somebody does good things, then he's good king. If good means there's none good, no, not one, then he's not good in that. I don't know that he was saved. I just don't know. There's a lot of doubt there. And if there's a lot of doubt, that's a problem in and of itself. And the reason I say that is after his mentor, the high priest, died, then he started back on his own. Let me back up a screen here. Oh, no, I can't back up a screen because it's all blocked off. Anyway, after the high priest died and he was not listening to anybody anymore, or listening to the rabbi anymore, or chief priest rather, anymore, he started listening to other people. And whatever they told him, he did. He didn't remove the high places. End up taking gold from the temple and paying tribute to the Syrians because he was afraid of the Syrians. When the reality of it is, as the king of Israel, it was his job to trust God against the enemy. Remember the 3 laws that pertain to a king?
Cannot multiply
Wives,
horses, or land.
horses,
And
wives, horses, and wealth.
Wives.
Yeah.
Wives, horses, and
They're all there. I don't know if we got them in any order there. Well, they're all there. The key one there is horses. All right. Horses were not for recreation in those days. And so it wasn't like they're going to Kentucky Derby. Horses back in those days were for war. And what God is telling them, the king is, you don't need all those horses. Why? He's because I'm your protection. Don't trust in horses, just like you don't trust wealth. And he also said, if you multiply wives, you're going to start trusting them and they're going to turn your heart away from it. So it's a matter of trust in all of these, really, when it comes down to it, in whether you trust God or trust man. Well, Joash here trusted man. He didn't do what God wanted to do. And then here's the key thing that he did. Remember, he was raised by Jehoiada, the high priest, and Jehoshaphat, his wife. Well, Jehoiada had a son. Remember, the high priesthood went from father to son. He didn't go outside the family. Aaron passed it to his son Eleazar, who passed it to his son Phinehas, and down the line. So the next in line to be high priest was a man by the name of Zechariah. Now, this is not Zechariah as in the book of Zechariah. There's a few different Zechariahs in the Bible. And so it says here that Jehoiada cried out against the king's sin, or actually Zechariah, the son of Jehoiada, cried out against the king's sin, and Joash then ordered him to be stoned to death. This is somebody that he would have been raised with, because it's the son of the high priest, and he was raised by the high priest. And therefore, having him executed, that doesn't show a lot of spirituality to me. Matthew refers to him, the son of Berechiah, but 2 Chronicles 24:20, son of Jehoiada. In lineages, sometimes when there's a difference in genealogy, you have to really look and find out why. Sometimes it's because there's generations that are skipped. They're only there to mention the pertinent ones at that point. Matthew 23, some believe, and it's very possible, Jesus referring to him almost 1900 years later in Matthew 23:35. And remember, one of the key things of understanding in the Bible is that in the Old Testament there is no word for grandson. Therefore, what could have happened here in 2 Chronicles 24:20, this, say, Zechariah the son of Jehoiada, could actually be Zechariah the grandson. Or it could be great-grandson or great-great-great-great-grandson. Okay? Just like Jesus is the son of David. Well, that's a lot of generations, 14, I think, generations between those two. No. This very well could be, and that's why you have to look at everything up in context. Go to other chapters. Jehoiada actually could have had a son named Berechiah, and Berechiah had a son, Zechariah. The reason that Berechiah is not mentioned here is because the important ones in this list are is Jehoiada and Zechariah. Therefore, Berechiah doesn't matter at this point in time. There are always explanations. There's times when people say the Bible has mistakes, there are contradictions in it. And it's simply because people don't read enough of it to find out exactly what the Bible actually says, or they want to find mistakes. If you want to find mistakes, you'll find mistakes. May not be real, and probably won't be real, but you can find mistakes. You always can find something to make you feel better if that's what you want to do. Jesus said that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you slew between the temple and the altar. We don't know for sure, but this makes sense as to who this was, because he was the priest that was slain at the temple and the altar. And Jesus here is just making a statement from the Old Testament that you're guilty of the blood of Abel, all the way up to even Zechariah, the high priest. You're guilty. Zechariah and Stephen both were put to death for the same reason, both stoned, really for the same reason. They spoke the truth. Stephen had a great opportunity to walk away that day. It would have been the easiest thing in the world, and probably most people would not have blamed him. And in fact, most people probably would have encouraged him. Because when Stephen got up, he basically preached through the Old Testament in about 10 minutes. If you read the passage in the way that it might be spoken, it may take 10 minutes to go through, or less, but whatever it was. He was told to be quiet. I would think he probably had maybe even friends there who meant well, saying, yes, Stephen, just be quiet. We'll go up to Galilee, we'll go over to Ephesus, we'll go someplace else, and you can preach all you want to. You know, just be quiet right now. They already know what you believe, so let's just hit the road. And there may be people who would do that, but Stephen did not listen to them. Why? Well, I think because he knew God wanted him to continue. Did it matter? Would it have made a difference if he had quit that day?
I think so.
It would have made a difference. First of all, we wouldn't be talking about him.
That's right.
All right. Secondly, who was standing there listening?
Saul.
Saul, later Paul.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What type of person was Saul?
He was a persecutor of the church.
Persecutor of the church, dogmatic about everything. He didn't halfway believe something. He either believed it or he didn't believe it. And very strong-willed about that. Even after he got saved, in Acts 13:13, remember what happened in 13:13? That made Barnabas and Paul part ways?
Because Barnabas left he left and he came.
John
Mark.
John
Mark. Barnabas wanted to bring Mark back because Mark quit in Acts 13:13. And Paul hated quitters. So if Stephen had quit that day, Paul was standing there, what would Paul have thought of Christianity?
It was unstable.
Yeah, but instead of a bunch of quitters, you don't really believe what you say you believe, you did, you stick with it. And Paul would be willing to die for what he believed. And he felt like everybody else should too. So when Stephen continued, one of the last things that Stephen said was, Lord, lay not this sin to their charge.
Yes.
In 2 Timothy chapter 4, the last book that Paul wrote shortly, very shortly before his execution, one of the last things he wrote was, Lord, lay not this sin to their charge. I believe that, and I can't 100% prove it, but I believe that it's very likely that Paul remembered that statement his whole Christian life. Lord, lay not this sin to their charge. I believe that in Acts chapter 8, when Paul heard it, he started being convicted by the Holy Spirit of God with that statement and the testimony of Stephen. So in Acts chapter 9, on the road to Damascus, while Stephen is already gone by that point, I believe we can honestly say it was Stephen who led Paul to the Lord. Because what Stephen said prior to that. And Paul recognized him as someone who's a martyr, somebody willing to die for the faith. It says, and he knelt down and cried with a loud voice, Lord, lay not this sin to their charge. And when he had said this, he fell asleep, he died. Zechariah here, thus Joash the king remembered not the kindness of Jehoiada his father had done to him, but slew his son, and when he died, he said, the Lord, look upon it and require it. Zechariah dies, demanding God judge his murderers. Stephen asked the Lord to forgive them. Why? Well, not 100% sure why. Both I can understand. Zechariah here is the high priest, making him a very important example to all of Israel. And if somebody can get away with killing the high priest, then the next one comes along, they kill him too. And so that may be the reason why, and if that's the reason why, it makes a lot of sense. As far as Stephen's concerned, there's no lineage passed down, no ministry passed down from him. So upon his death, he got to be with the Lord. He didn't care about anything else. Joash suffered from God. God allowed the Syrians to invade Judah, Jerusalem, the capital, killing the leaders, killing people. Joash, in fact, was wounded himself, severely wounded, leaving the palace officials end up killing him in his own bed. Why? Because he ordered the death of Zechariah, the high priest. Genesis 9, 5, and 6 says, and surely your blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every beast will I require it, and at the hand of man, at the hand of every man's brother will I require it, the life of man. Whoso sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God made he man. I know capital punishment, a lot of people argue back and forth over that. I couldn't be an executioner. Do I believe in capital punishment? Yeah, I do. I think there are times for it. The problem in our society is, are there wrong people that are killed? Very likely there have been. There's no doubt about that. I don't know if y'all watch America's Got Talent. I can't remember the guy's name right now, but what was it, 28 years or 38 years? The guy spent in prison for a crime he didn't do and was finally released. So I understand that. There are instances. But there's some that are so clear cut that I think the person ought to be executed right away. Y'all remember Blanche Taylor Moore? Still alive. Still alive. She was convicted early 90s, I think it was. Living off, government's taking care of her, basically. She killed, I don't know, who knows how many people when it comes down to it. I think our justice system needs to be correct as best they can. But I do believe in capital punishment. And the Bible teaches capital punishment. Whoso sheds a man's blood, a man shall his blood be shed. Again, here you had the high priest killed, and so the palace officials killed Joash because he killed the high priest. Makes a lot of sense. Actually had two men involved in the execution. Neither one were Israelites. You had an Ammonite and a Moabite. Who knows why? Maybe the Jews felt like that if a foreigner did the execution, then they wouldn't blame the Israelites, and Israel would be united as a nation. If an Israelite killed another Israelite, then maybe they'd be divided. I don't know. I remember back 1995 when Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated. I was in Jerusalem when he was assassinated, Prime Minister of Israel. And I remember, even though I was a young kid at the time, I remember how people reacted when John F. Kennedy was shot and killed. I remember seeing people crying and, I mean, just panicking. It's the first time in my lifetime anything like that happened. I'm sure, you know, March of '68, when Martin Luther King was assassinated, you remember the response of the people and all that. Well, it's like it was in Israel. And then started listening to the news and find out, you know, who did this. And everybody was afraid that it was a Palestinian. Because if it was a Palestinian, then you'd have all-out war at that point. And it turned out to be a man by the name of Yigal Amir, who was an Israeli. And that, you know, the most horrible thing that could have happened, that was one good thing, that he wasn't Israeli. Because it wasn't, it'd been bad. It'd been really bad. There would be a world war if somebody was able to kill him like that. Next week, we'll look at Amaziah, the 9th ruler.
Can you go back to?
Yeah.